.env file is also known as the environment variables, right? This is where I will keep all of my secret keywords or secret variables so that people don't have access to them. Now the next file I want to create is called app.js. This is the major file where I'll be running any application or all of my applications. I've created two files, the .env file and the app.js file. Now back to my .env file, I have to, let me quickly go to my Mongodb. Let me go to my. Now I want to copy my connection string. I haven't copied mine yet, so let me just quickly copy mine. Have you created your folder and your .env, right? Now create a variable. It's not going, don't call it variable, just use capital letter and type mongo URI equal to, yes, mongo underscore URI equal to something like this. You just type mongo underscore URI equal to, then paste that URI that you copied from MongoDB Cloud. Let me just close this one since I'm not using this. Alright, so let me just create my own new connection string, connect my application, copy my own string. Now this is what I'm doing with my string. Now I'll just come back to this point and paste it, right? Then here I'll now type in what the database that I want to create, whatever name in between this forward slash and this question mark. I want to name my own. Now this thing is a string, but because it's in the .env variable, you don't have to put your quotes. It will recognize that it's actually a string that is passed as a variable. Now I want to name, what should I name it? I want to name, I just want to name it, what should I name it? Database 1. Underscore 1. This is what I'm calling my database. Now in this second place now, password, watch, you just clear everything including the greater than and the less than sign, and then replace it with your password. So I'm going to replace mine with my password. The one I use a very, very simple password. I don't want stress, so I use a very, very simple password. Now after doing that, I will now come since you are allowed. What kind of security breach is this? This is what you should clear. This whole password string here, like this, including the greater than and the less than sign, minus, don't clear this colon here. Now after doing that, because now we are actually going into Express, so Express is just a framework for writing better Node.js. You won't have to be writing long lines of code to perform just simple functionalities. Now for us to actually connect to that database, like I was telling you earlier, you will have to create different folders for creating database, different folders for creating tables. Tables in MongoDB are called schemas. So to create a database, right, or we've already created a database already using that string, but to connect to that database, we will now go to create a new folder. This folder now I'm going to call it DB, a database. We have, that's that database now I have in my .env. I've named it, right? So I have to connect to it so that it will now be created. So it's still in the process of creating, although, because I've given it a name, right, and I've created a string from my Mongo URI for it. So to connect to it and to make it actually visible, I have to create a connection, just the way we've been doing MySQL.connect. So I'll create a folder, not a file, a folder called DB. outside, just in the root directory. Now inside of that folder, I want to now create a file. Just you can call it database, whatever. I want to call mine DB.
Like node.anything.
No, no, it's a folder, not a file. So,
It's a folder, not a file.
yes. Connect.js is the file inside of the folder. I've created a file inside of that DB folder called connect.js inside. Good. Now, to actually connect this file now, I have to download a module called Mongoose. So to do that, I will say npm install Mongoose. So I'm installing this now. Just npm install Mongoose. Right now, okay, before doing that, sorry, I forgot something. I have to actually initialize. Now, you asked me a question earlier, how do you know the things, the npm that has already been installed? Now, to do that, you have to create a JSON file, a package or JSON file. You have to initialize it. So to initialize the package or JSON, all you have to do is to say npm init. Just enter. When you click on npm, type npm init, click on enter. Now, what this JSON file will do is just to create a package name or whatever this project that we're working on now, to just give it a description. Now you see, what is the package name? I want to call my package name express.2. I'll just hit on enter. What version of this application am I creating? Version 1, no problem. Description: this is an introduction to Express, to the Express framework. Right? Great. Entry point app.js. That means where will I be running? Where will I be doing node? That node app, so that it recognize that it is on this app.js, this file I've created here. That's the entry point. So if somebody does it, or I can change it if I want.
Oh, sorry, sir. Immediately I installed the Mongoose.
Yes.
I want automatically created
The package.json. Okay, that's good for you. You don't need to do this. Enter, log into the package.json and see what is there.
dependency Mongoose.
Are you seeing the Mongoose? Great. So app.js, mine doesn't have that. Test command. I just want to
package log.
I'll just enter. Sorry, you said?
I also have package log for the JSON.
Yeah, exactly. No problem. So now I have my package.json. Now in this package.json, look at that description I wrote. This is an introduction to the Express framework. Now remember when we were talking about JSON files, right? In after we spoke about objects, so JSON files are also like objects, but they are just slightly different. The difference is that this one takes much more. I mean, it's much more like a description, much more advanced. Understand? But they also look like objects somehow if you look at them. So finally, I can now install that my Mongoose, right? I want to install Mongoose, so I'll click on it. It's not in my package.json file, so I want to bring it into my package.json file so that I'll keep track of all the modules that I'm installing. Where are you?
I didn't change my app. Installing my app everything because I just entered it.
Yes, it's by default. It's the only app. It's the only folder here on the root folder.
Okay, aside from the connect.
Yes, connect.js is a folder. App.js is a file. So it will select the nearest or the file it sees in your root folder as the entry point. So quickly, just enter until the end. Now the short form of not going through all that is just to say npm init -y. So it's just do that automatically. Now you can see I have dependencies Mongoose. I hope you have 6.7.2 in yours. Where are you, please? Is it installing? Okay. Now immediately you will see a folder appear when it finishes installing. You will see these node modules. It's come with so many things. So these are all the modules and what they are like, what they come with. This will just be here. So many files actually. Now, when you are sending this to GitHub, it is recommended not to send this as well. The reason is because it will just take too much data and it might just slow down the application just to move it to GitHub. So in order to prevent that, we'll have to do two things. We'll now create a .gitignore file. Now this .gitignore file will now prevent the node modules from being sent to my GitHub.
So
Is in the root. Is in the root. So to access the root, just click on this blank space here and then create a file or a folder. Yeah, you say, how did I get what? Once that Mongoose is successfully installed, that package will launch should appear. Please install it again if you don't have it. This is the root. Once you click on the blank space in the folder menu, you can now create a file in the root folder. So you can see I have two variables here in my gitignore, node modules and .env. And what this will do is to prevent these node modules and this .env to be pushed to GitHub, so that you will not be able to push both of them to GitHub. It will send all your files, but it will ignore. That's what it means. Ignore. GitHub should ignore these two files. Node modules. This one is a folder. That's why I'm having this / here. And then this one is a file .env, which is for this one. So that's the function of this one. I can now close this. Close my. Just create a gitignore file, and then have this node modules, node_modules, and the .env. Yes. Try as much as you can to be closing this thing to help you. I mean, all these apps that are running off, you have closed them. So I hope everybody has this now. They are gitignore. I don't understand. You are not creating it properly. Come here and click outside of it. This is how to create something in the root folder. Just click on this blank space here and then click on new file. When you click on new file, to create it on the root directory. Okay, then add these two variables there under / node modules and then .env. I hope it's there now. Great. Now this, like I said, is just to hide those two folders, or the file and the folder, from being pushed to GitHub, so that people will not be seeing your URL, your connection string to your database. That created the what? Yes. It's the npm that you've installed that created them. Which two lines of code? These are this is the file and the folder that will prevent GitHub from pushing. So now we'll go back to, let me close. I like closing things a lot so that nobody will be confused. Now I'm going back to this connect.js file. Now I want to require this module here, this Mongoose module that I've already installed. I want to require it into this connect.js so that I can make use of this. This Mongoose is the tool, or is the module that will help us to connect to our database. Now if I go back to this connect.js, I will now say const Mongoose should be equal to require Mongoose. I will now say, yeah, you can name it anything, but I'll name my Mongoose. But this require must actually be Mongoose. Now I'll now create another variable called const connect db. That means to connect my database. I want to actually add a comment here. You don't need to add your comments in yours. I just want to add my connecting my database. So this will be a function that takes a parameter called URL. It's a function that takes a parameter called URL. and it does what? It will return what? Mongoose dot connect, and it's trying to connect the what we have in the URL, and then to take a second argument which will be an object, and this object would have this value: use new URL parser, which is a boolean. I'll set it to true, and then the second parameter will be use unified modified. I think it's unified. Is it unified or modified? I think it's unified. Use modified topology, and then I'll set it to true as well. They are both booleans. So it's an object. It's first of all a function called connectdb that takes the URL as a parameter and then returns this same URL and an object. So we have to use modified topology, set it to true. Then after doing all this, I want to now export this function. So I'll now say module.export should be equal to connectdb. No problem. This is modified or unified. Sorry, let me confirm something. Let me keep the code on one side so it's the same. So it's actually unified topology, Mongodb, not modified topology. Change this to unified. Use unified topology. Yes. Which one? That is an object. Is this object here? All right. So I hope we are here now. Okay. I think I think what you need to do is to just observe and try to grasp the concepts, because right, just try to understand what is happening, and if you don't get any points, you just let me know. Now I've exported this DB, right? I will now go to my app.js. Please try to understand what is happening first. Now when I come to my app.js, I want to require my .env file, right? I want to require what I have saved here. So to do that, I'll just say require, right, .env. First of all, I have to also install .env. So I'll say npm. I want to install a couple of things actually. So I'll say cls. Now npm install .env. The second thing I want to install is Express, because Express itself is a module in Node.js. So I want to install Express. So for now, let's just install these two modules. Now come back here and say that .env. Now I'll just call that .env file, and I'll say .config because it's a configuration. After doing this, I will now say const express should be equal to require. I want to require my Express application. Express. Now if I go to my package.json, you can see .env, you can see Express, you can see Mongoose. Now back to my app.js, const express is equal to require express, right? Now I want to create an instance. It's just like a child element of this Express application I have. So I'll now say const app application should be equal to express, right? I will now put this bracket here. You can see it creates an Express application. So it's just like an instance of this Express application. Now after doing this, I want to create a port number. Remember when we were doing HTTP.create server, right? All that stuff. So I want to create a port for it as a variable. The port where I want my server to run on. I'll say port is equal to what? Port. Let's say I want to use port 3000. Now after creating port 3000, I can now say create a variable to start the application every time, so that I won't have to be restarting. It will be a function that will be starting my application. So I'll say start should be equal to a function, and that function should probably be an asynchronous function. So I'll just make it an async function. So after doing this, I'll now use my try catch block, set up a try catch block, and then call the function at the end of it. So I don't forget to call this function. So that whenever I'm running application.js, whenever I'm running trying to say node app.js, this function will be triggered first before it will run the application. Now I will now say start. So it's a function, so I'm calling the function here. Now in between this place now, but before I want to bring in that my Mongodb connection, which is here. So I will now come here. This space is unnecessary. Okay, let me actually install one more module, which is called npm install express async errors. This module is to catch errors. Anytime there's an error in my code, it should help me to catch it asynchronously. Now I have installed it. Let me check if that's actually installed, so you can see it has installed. Finally, the module that is important that I should install is nodemon. Now nodemon is, remember when we were doing our normal create server, we always had to say node app. We'll be breaking our server continuously. We don't have to do that with Express. We can just easily install an application or a module called nodemon. So I will say npm install nodemon. Now once this nodemon installs, don't relax, honestly, just chill, understand what is happening, understand the concept of what I'm doing now. What I want to do at this point is to create a connection. Everything here is to create but I have to create an enabling environment for that connection. That's what I'm doing. So don't forget about the bulkiness of it. Now, like I said, I'm just trying to create an enabling environment for it. Now, before, when we were using single page app to create our applications, we didn't have to do all these create folders. But now we're trying to make it look organized so that a particular folder will handle a particular function. Now, this folder called DB is trying to handle the connection itself. And to connect to MongoDB, I have to create this function here. And this function takes in a URL, right, as a parameter. You can see it's saying this is a parameter. And then in between it is returning. Now, anytime you see this return keyword, of course, you know it's function that should return something whenever the conditions are met. Now, this Mongoose here is what will help us to connect to this URL that we provided. Try to understand, forget the code, trying to understand the concept that is happening here. Mongoose will connect to the URL, and then I'm passing something else, an object. This is just default, it's standard that you have to pass this unified topology and then use URL parser. Now, when I do this, I will now want to require this connect.js inside of my application. Remember, this is the application I will be running. This is the application I will be running. So I want to now bring that connection I have. I'll say const connect db, which is this connect db here in my db. This connect db function. I want to bring it inside of my app.js. So I'll go back to my app.js and I'll say connect db should be equal to require what am I requiring? I'll look for the folder where it exists. The folder exists where? In the DB folder. Right? So it exists in the DB folder. I will now click on this DB folder, / connect is the file name. That means all the function that exists in this DB now is now here in this variable. Everything that I've created inside of this DB folder is now inside of this file called, is now inside of this variable called connect DB. That's clear, right? So I don't need this folder again. I don't need to be going there again because I've already placed everything there inside of this file, inside of this inside of this variable called connect.db. I'm requiring everything inside of the DB folder, inside of the connect file. I hope this is clear. I'm bringing it inside of the app.js. Every function that exists in this DB folder, that is what I am calling here. I'm saving everything inside of this connect.db. in the debug folder, in this connect.js file, everything here. You remember I exported it. I exported the file here. I exported the function, I mean to say. Now to actually import it, I'm now requiring it here in my app.js file, this connect.db. I hope it's clear. So this simple thing that not on this is my terminal though.
Yes.
I exported it here. Look at where I exported it. I say module.export connect.db, this variable. I exported it here. And here I'm importing it by saying require connect whatever is in this connect file, connect.js file. I hope it's clear. This is clear, right?
Yes, it's clear, but you have to follow that along so that
No, if you are following along, you just want to copy code, you will not know what I'm doing. This file, you will always get it.
yes, I know, but the part where we are going to do like this particular part where you connect, first of all, you showed us that you exported it from down here, and later on you installed the download more.
I've not used it yet. Though.
But it's part of the way that one was sort of something like design that one aside from
But the thing is, if you are following like that, like if you are just typing what I'm typing, honestly.
You just copy the code.
Yes.
But once you explain it and you make sure you copy and follow up just the way, that's how you
Okay.
But once we know what the thing is, once we know what we are doing, like I still don't understand that user passer. I don't know if it's a good one. That use new URL passer.
Use new URL passer.
The one we use in the connect.js, the file
Okay. It's just an object that we would. It's just like added sugar to this URL. These are the things. Just is a syntax that you have to use in Mongoose to connect the URL that you've copied already.
That you can control words. That was the thing.
Okay, no problem. I'll do more of that now. Now,
if you go ahead, like if you copy it now, you go ahead, come on, carry yours along. You know, like when you left me down there.
All right, but now so far so good. Is everywhere good? Eh?
When you mean that is the connection, mean that object is the connection you require to connect this app to our Mongodb database.
Yeah. Now remember when we were creating MySQL, we had an object that will take in hosts and all that stuff. That is this object. That is the function of what this object is doing. That is everything it is doing there. Instead of to be saying host, this, that, that's the function of this thing here. By taking first of all the URL and then taking this object. This thing is a default. You're not going to see anything different from this. Every time you are creating a connection, you have to use these two strings. Every time. So it's not like it's something new, but this is just the same thing that we're doing there, but we are using a method to do it. That's what I'm saying. Is that it's a boolean actually that says this use new URL passer true, use unified topology. That's just how the syntax for Mongodb, I mean for Mongoose is. Clear? Okay, do you know what? When we connect it, we'll explain it again. We are very close to the connection now. Now, finally, again, because now that's why I said if we're just doing concept by concept by concept without combining those concepts together, we will not learn. We have to combine everything that we'll be learning. That's why now I'm using try catch. We did this try catch in JavaScript. We used asynchronous function in JavaScript. So is everything that we've been doing now that we want to start using practically. Now, this try catch block now, remember what it does is to, first of all, it will try everything that is here. If it doesn't work, then it will catch errors. So what I want to do now is to try to connect the database. If it doesn't work, then it should catch the error here. So to actually connect the database, see what is going to happen now. Because I'm using an asynchronous function. Remember what I said asynchronous function means? It doesn't wait for anything. To take the request, first of all, it will continue attending to other things. That means it's not going to delay my application if I'm using an asynchronous function. But if I'm using synchronously, it's going to wait for one request to be attended to first before it will go to the next one. Yes, it is a synchronous function. That means two things can be happening at the same time. You can take two requests and they will be happening at the same time, regardless of how much CPU or how much value it is trying to get or what request it is making. It will still be processing it to take the request. Now I think I have a pen. Now I will say await. Please wait for my connection to connect. Please wait for this connect DB. Wait for it to connect first. The URL, what is the URL? Remember, my URL exists where? In my .env file. I will now say process.env.port. I mean, sorry, not port. What's the file called? It's called Mongo URI. That's what we saved it as. We'll say Mongo URI _ URI. Again, let me explain this line of code. This line 11 now is trying to connect. Remember this connect DB function we created here. What is the parameter it's taking? URL. It's taking the URL. It's taking URL as a parameter. Connect DB is a function that has URL as a parameter. Right? Great. Now back to my add.js. It's just as if I'm calling the function now. Just the way we call functions. Just the way we call functions. This is a function that I'm calling. Start is a function that I'm calling, right? Which is this start here. I'm calling it down here. Now, connect DB is also a function that I'm trying to call. And as I'm calling it, when I programmed that particular function, I programmed that it should take a parameter called URL. Now I have to pass the URL here. Now I can decide to go back to my .env, copy this whole thing here, and pass it here, and just paste it here. Or I could just say process keyword .env, this file here. This process is a keyword to reference files, right? Process.env.mongo URI, which is this Mongo URI keyword we have here. The variable name is called what? Mongo URI. So this is the way to access that URI string there. Now we should wait for this thing. Let it work first before it will do the next line. Now the next line it should process is this. It should say app, which is this application of an express that we've already created. App.listing. Now this listing, now remember what this listing keyword is. To listen on a particular port. When we're creating HTTP servers, we use listen. Listen, that means you should wait for my connection. I'm using asynchronous function. Two things are happening, but this time around I want it to wait for this connection to be real first. Like let it connect first before it will now listen on a port. And the port is listening on what is port. This port variable that I created here, which is 3000. Listen on port 3000. I want to create a callback function. This is one you're already used to this. I'll just say console.log what server. I don't need to include this callback function, but it's just for me to see that my connection has actually worked. Because if it doesn't work, this callback function will not work. Why? Because I'm already awaiting this connect DB. If I don't set this await connect DB and just put app.that, regardless it will connect to the server. Now before we do any of that, I'll actually okay, don't worry first. For now, know that this connect DB is a function that has a parameter called URL that is taking a URL as a parameter, and that URL that I'm taking now is this process.env here that I'm trying to call it into this position. App.listing on ports. This is the same thing as saying this whole thing that we were doing before. I'll just say what's it called? No, not SQL, HTTP, and then I'll just to be equal to require what? The HTTP module. Then I'll now say HTTP right dot create server. This whole thing that I'll now say request response. Then I'll now do this, and then I'll come down and say dot listen, and then on port right say 3000, and then I'll now have my callback function. This whole thing here is this one line here. App.listen on where? This app.listen is this application here. So this application is the same thing as saying require HTTP. This whole thing here is this application express. Then I'm saying listen, app.listen on the ports, which is the same thing as me saying just removing this thing and saying 3000. So I'm just passing it as a variable. I'll just say port. Then console.log, server is what? Remember, I'm using backticks here. Server is listening on port dollar sign port. Port is a variable, remember? So now after doing this, just in case my server or my database does not connect, what should you do? Just console.log error. Console.log the reason why it is not connecting. That's what that's happening here. Now I can close this. Now before we run this, let me go through this particular file. Now, from the beginning, I said require.env. What does require do? Bring something. Import. It's just like saying import. Now, before I'll be able to use it here, now I have to require it. Before I'll be able to use ConnectDB, I have to require it. ConnectDB on its own is a function. .env is a file. And this .config is just like I'm setting it as my configuration for what? My MongoDB. Now, I'm saying require my ConnectDB. I'm creating a variable called port and I'm naming it 3000. I'm creating an express application for me to create this express application is the framework for writing better Node.js code. Now I'm requiring it from the express. I'm creating an instance of this express application here. Now I could easily just say express.list in itself, but it's just better to create an instance, just like a class, a child of a class. Now application should be what to express, right?
Now you remember
we installed this. It's a module. Now after bringing it now, this whole thing here is a function. This starts now is a function that is saved inside of a variable called start. That's why here I'm calling start function. Now this start function is what will trigger my app.js. This is what will make it to run. But before that app.js would run, what should it do? It should first of all try to connect to my database. Is when you connect to my database that my application should now listen on port 3000. Then callback function. The callback function, remember what callback functions are? What should happen if this is successful? Tell me that my server is listening on the port number, which is what? 3000. Now let's see if this works. All we need to do now, that nodemon that I installed now is just so I will not be coming here to say node app every time. Now I've already installed that nodemon. Now to actually make that nodemon work, I will go to my package.json file. When I go to my package.json file, I will now clear this under this script tag. I want to just clear, okay, I'll clear the script tag and then I'll create my start script. This is called the start script. This is what will be triggered anytime I say node app or something. Then instead of it to say, now if I say node app, that means anytime I start this application will run. That's just it. But because I'm using the nodemon module, I will just say nodemon app.js. That means what this is doing, how should we run this application that we have created is by running this nodemon module that we've already installed, and then the app itself is called app.js. So to actually trigger this whole thing so that it will run, all I need to do is to say npm start, not nodes app again. This one I'm saying npm start, or I could just easily come to this my package and just click here, run script. It's the same thing. Either I come to my terminal and say node start, or I'll just come here, highlight this and click on this one. It will run the script. So let's run the script and see if we can connect to our database. You see, it's looking slightly different. Nodemon has already started. Nodemon is starting what? Node app.js. Now you can see that my server is connected successfully because why? It has awaited for the connection DB and then it has said server. Now let me try to make some changes. Let's say I remove some things here. Oh, sorry, not even here. Let me not even change. Oh, sorry, I've spoiled something. I've spoiled something now. I don't even know where I stored it. Why? This is the last one. Z. Okay, Mongodb. Okay, this is okay. Now this is it. Now I'll go back to my connect. Let me just change some things. Let me just take out or let me just change this thing. And then it will see that it's automatically changing. It's not, I don't have to break out of that server. It's automatically restarting my app. You can see what is console not defined. App.js number 13. App.js number 13. Console is okay, man. Oh, it's console.log. It automatically restarts. It should throw an error. Why? Because that thing that I changed there cannot allow my application to connect to the database. So you can see it threw an error. And what is the error telling me? It's telling me what? Mongo parser error. Option use uni this thing is not supported. I'll go back to my Mongodb. That is what I use. So it is not supported. I have to press Ctrl Z here. Press Ctrl Z here to have unified topology. It automatically restarts again, and then it should connect to my DB this time around. You can see the server is listening on properly. So that database has been successfully connected to.
So as you are making the changes,
Yeah,
the terminal
is restarting automatically. Now, what can we do with this server that we have now? We can serve up the front end with this server. How do we do that? We can create another folder now called public folder. I can just say public, and in this public I can have, let's say, index.html, and in this index.html maybe I'll just have HTML, and I'll now say here h1 welcome to HTML. Now remember, my port is on what? 3000, right? To actually make use of this public file, because now there's no way, if I go to my 3000 now, localhost 3000 is going to recognize localhost 3000. It's not going to recognize that HTML file. Cannot get. Now to actually get it, it's already connected to my database. Now to actually get it, I have to do a few things. Now the things I have to do are, now number one, I have to create this. I will just say app.use, and the middleware function I want to use is express.static, so that I can load up static folders. I can load up HTML content. So I want to call it, this is the file name or the folder name that exists, and the folder name is what? Public. It's on the public folder. So it's on the public folder, app.use express.static public. Now let me try to run this particular app again. You can see welcome to HTML. So I'm now serving this HTML page from where? My backend. I'm now serving front-end code from my backend, just because of this line of code here. App.use express.static public. Right? App.use what? Express.static public. Now, what else can we do? Remember, we've always been using get request. Now we can actually create a post request. We can actually collect data. Since we have a database, now this thing looks like is much more stressful than what we had in like HTTP, create server and all that. But this is way powerful. Like, it's more powerful than like what this simple thing that we've done now can do. Is very powerful. Is more powerful than just creating a HTTP server, because now with just this like few lines of code we've connected to a database. We can create tables inside of that database or schemas. We can add values. We can collect data from users. We can serve HTML documents there. So many things that we can do here. So what do we start with? Let's actually start by creating maybe a form that will collect data. Now, to create a form, now this is our index.html, right? Let's create another one called what? Registration or register.html. Next one should be login.html, or you know what? Okay, let's say login.html. Now in our registration.html, register.html, let's just have a boilerplate called HTML. file, and then here want to create a simple form that has a post request, and the action it should perform is register the user. And then in between the form we now have what, an input, right? I just want to take one value here so that it will not be too. The email is what I want to collect from the user. The name should be what? Email. The ID should be what? Email. Now I want to create a label for this, so I'll say label, right, for email should be what? Email. And let's load this up. How do we load this up? You just come here and cite register.html. You can see this is it. Now this whole thing is coming back to us like from the we can actually create a submit button now. Here, input type submit, value should be what? Submit. Now in this case, now we can just break it so that it will look better. Come back here, refresh this, and you can see my submit is there. Now if I do this now, it's not going to do anything for me. And first of all, let me actually create valid reasons. Cannot post register because I've not created what is called a controller to control this register route. I have not created what? A controller to register this route. Now, all these things are necessary because MongoDB cannot create a database if it does not have values inside of the table. So we must have a schema where we will impute, just where we've been having SQL, we have to actually have values there before we'll be able to see it in our cloud. And where are we getting it this time around? We don't want to create any dummy value. We want to actually get it from users. And to get it from users, we have to create what is called a controller. Or before we get that controller, we have to actually create the model. And that model is the same thing as the way we were creating tables yesterday. That whole create table from all that stuff, we can do that in MongoDB. And how do we do that in MongoDB? We create a separate folder for creating tables, and that folder should be called models. Now, it's not called tables in Mongoose or MongoDB, it's called schemas. Now, create my model, and inside of the model, I want to create a file called auth.js. Now, this particular, call it table, call it schema, would be for the authentication. Forget the code, just try to understand what is happening. Const mongoose. This time around, I want to now require that mongoose again. This time around, this mongoose now, remember the first mongoose we created was to do what? Was to connect to the database. This new mongoose that we're doing is to create what? Table. I'm saying table, but they don't call it table here, they call it schemas. Now, this same thing now, we're doing it when we're doing MySQL, we're just doing it on one page. Now we're doing it on two pages now, or separate pages, so that somebody will be able to read it. If the person comes to DB, they will see how we connected our application. If the person comes to model, they will see how we created our schemas. Now say const mongoose should be equal to what? Mongoose, require what? The mongoose file or the mongoose module. Right? Require the mongoose module.